Hello, and welcome to the PhD Life Raft podcast. I'm Emma Brzezinski, and today I am talking to the marvellous Cynthia Fasola. We're talking about applying to PhD programs, and Cynthia touches both on the practical and the emotional aspect of that process. So I do hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, Cynthia.
Hello, Emma.
So lovely to have you here. Thank you very much. So I found you online. I stalked you online, and I found that you were doing work encouraging and supporting other people applying for PhD programs. And so that is what we're going to talk about today. You very generously said yes to coming to talk about this. But before we get into that, I'm going to ask a question that I ask everybody in terms of telling us a little bit about your PhD journey so far, indeed, because you are in it at the moment. So tell us about your journey.
Yeah, so I'm basically in my second year. I'm actually doing my PhD in the UK, at the University of Greenwich, and I'm going to my second year. So I technically have a 4-year PhD. So I have 3 years of funding for my PhD. So fingers crossed I can get it done in 3 years. But yeah, how did I get into my PhD? So I was actually working as a research manager in a local hospice here in England, and I I was facing a lot of obstacles in my job, and one thing that I was also feeling a lot was lonely. I was looking for mentorship, people to kind of guide me. So I decided to sort of like, start looking for PhD programs that aligned with what I was interested in terms of research. I found this PhD, which was all about looking into feedback practices, and barriers that people from ethnic minority backgrounds are facing to get feedback as academics to help them like basically progress more and basically plug up the leaky pipeline of academia, especially for minoritized individuals. So yeah, I've just finished my first year. I'm in my second year. I received ethics approval for my first study.
Yes.
Super exciting. Yes, yeah. Um, I'm basically in data collection. I'm literally right now trying to recruit other people who are also in their doctoral study, who are from ethnic minoritized backgrounds and are willing to basically talk about what their experience with, feedback from their supervisor is like and what's been helpful and useful for them and things around that. So that's basically, I'm literally like, knee deep in my PhD right now. It's exciting, it's terrifying, it's all the emotions right now.
I love that.
Um,
And so potentially, I suppose if people are listening and they would like to make contact with you about that, we'll have your details in the show notes after. And I'm also sure that many people will be feeling your pain in terms of that recruitment process and data collection. Oh, blimey, yes. But you got ethics. Let's not lose the positive. You've got that. That's
yeah,
a real achievement.
yes, certainly.
Amazing. So you are living this story right now. Um,
Um,
but what you're particularly what you said you would talk about, not what you said you would talk about, what I wanted you to be able to share with other people, because I think it's really valuable, is about applying for PhD programs. And we've never done an episode on this before. We're always talking to people who are on it, but actually this sense of how do you even get there is a really important question. So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you have been doing and that process for you?
yeah, so I love to help other professionals, mature students, particularly health professionals and people who have been away from university for extended periods, but they're looking to kind of establish themselves as experts in their industry, in their fields in health, or wherever it may be. and would like to get their PhD and are like, struggling with that inertia of how do I get my PhD application together? How do I apply? Or I need full funding because, I don't really want to sacrifice my left arm, my left leg, and my kidney as well, right? So how do I go about all of that? So my work kind of surrounds helping them find the key things that will internally, the things internally that they need to sort of like, put together to apply, if it's confidence, if it's, the sort of like right materials, writing their story in a personal statement, research proposal, finding the supervisors, anything and everything to do with like putting together that, that stellar PhD application, as well as like funding as well. So I work around all of that. And the key sort of goal is to come out with a fully funded, PhD, admissions. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what I do.
Wow. Okay. So you're working some magic. So you said there really interestingly about the internal work. Can you say a little bit more about that in terms of building confidence and what that might mean?
Yeah, I think there are like different parts to that. And I think the best sort of like example I can give is like a good friend of mine who's working at a director level at, a not-for-profit organization. And I went to school with her. She's brilliant. She is an analytical thinker. And because of how her master's went a few years ago, she's really hesitant about getting her PhD. But one thing, because she's also doing research in her job, she knows the value of getting her PhD, but she's also wanting to like go to a top school. Like her dream is to maybe go into Oxford and get it with funding. And there's a lot of procrastination going on, like mentally, like, oh, can I get into such a top school? Do I have the time? And I think one of the key things that, she just goes to me was like, the fear that what happened in her master's will happen again. So she was supposed to finish in like a year, but it had to be extended to 2 years. So a lot of like fears from what she's dealt with in the past, and also fears in terms of like the future, like fear of failure, fear of not being able to achieve what she wants to do. So with someone like that, like I work with sort of like understanding what's causing the procrastination. Like, okay, you're afraid that you might not actually finish, or it'll take you longer, or you won't have the capacity because you're so busy now. And when you were in school, you were not as busy as you have now. You don't have a toddler running after, your feet, or like other family members demanding your attention, and a job that has all these things. Like we sort of like work on all those internal things as well, besides just actually putting together the actual application together. Like what is causing you to procrastinate taking this next step, right? What is causing you to, maybe you actually have decided, like, why are you not working on your research proposal? Okay, you know the research topic you want to do. Why aren't you reaching out to supervisors, right? So it's everything and anything around that, but it's more about like making sure the internal work is done as well.
I love that.
I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense. And I think what's really interesting is that kind of this journey goes on throughout the PhD, doesn't it? In terms of like, I know I need to do, but why am I not doing it? Because I don't think
exactly.
any PhD researcher, I don't think anyone who needs any help to find out what they need to do, but it's often that kind of that internal struggle, as you say. And I think also the other part, in terms of like your friend's story, in terms of, but there's something in her that's calling her in. And that's so gorgeous, isn't it? That people get called into the PhD. And I think there's magic in that. So there might be that internal struggle between I really want this, but I'm not sure. That makes a lot of sense in terms of attending to that and continuing to attend to that, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
But then, as you say, there are kind of logistical things, and I also recognise that it's the work that you're doing too is attending to the fact that maybe it's not quite a level playing field for everybody in terms of coming in.
Yeah.
And coming into this.
Yeah. Oh, yes. So I was going to say that we don't all have access to the same information.
Yeah.
of how to sort of like get that fully funded PhD. Like I was listening to one of your previous podcasts, and people have acknowledged that sometimes they don't actually know that you can get like a fully funded PhD, which, you know, for me, that was something that I got as part of my master's training. Even before that, I knew that from my bachelor's and some of the things I've been doing as an undergraduate student. I knew that it was a possibility. I was given that information so I could actually like have that and work towards that goal and be strategic about it. But lots of people don't have the information. And if they do have the information, people sometimes have a lot of like mental talk telling themselves that maybe I am not going to get that top scholarship, or I'm not going to get into that top program with some funding or some sort of way to kind of cover the cost. So like I've been very fortunate to be surrounded by people who've helped me get the not only confidence, but the actual information. Like, for example, knowing, you know, what to actually apply for, how to apply for it, seeing previous applicants, what they've done as well, and also knowing the strategies of how to get feedback on what you're doing. Because as a researcher, as a PhD student, and being immersed in, you know, academia, feedback is like a huge part of like your growth and how you develop. And if you don't get that feedback, it can be particularly daunting to, you know, share something and not know if it's good enough, if that makes sense. Like, am I, if it's going to be, you know, competitive. But the thing that, you know, I was able to kind of gain from my background, my education, and even now is how to access feedback. But this is feedback is also building your confidence as well. So it's helping you recognize what you're doing well, what you're not doing well, and how to make sure that you keep repeating what you are doing well and building on that. So I'm good at certain types of things. And rather than trying to, you know, like I'm not, the best analogy is like you're good at like, I have really bad hand-eye coordination. Like no matter how many times you hit a tennis ball at me, I can never hit it. Like I just can't.
I hear
But if you if you kick, you know, a football at me, oh, I'm gonna hit that. I might not hit it properly, but I can hit it. So for me, it's like, what's the point of trying to hit a tennis ball? But rather, at least I can hit the, you know, football, so I can actually work to develop that skill better. I feel like academia is like that as well. This is the essence of feedback, is to help you recognize what your strengths are, what you're good at, and how to kind of like, you know, build on that further so that you are the best researcher in your sector. So for example, I love qualitative research. I do qualitative research. Quantitative research, I can kind of get by, right? I can do the basics. But what's the point in me like kind of racking my head and just trying to do this thing when I'm already so good at this, but I can develop my skill further? Obviously, these are like quite general and broad examples, but how this kind of comes back to applying for PhDs, that certain people will think up topics and they'll think up questions, and it actually doesn't even align with their background. It doesn't align with their interest, or it's sometimes just slightly off. And, you know, it's not even believable that with your background and with your interest, you're going to do a PhD in this. Does that make sense,
It
Emma?
makes
To you?
absolute sense. And I think it speaks to this sense of, okay, so I'm going to be an academic, and this is what academics say. And these are sorts of things that academics are interested in. And actually that does two things. First of all, it doesn't value, like you say, your own life experiences and the things that you, that truly, that heartfelt calling that we were just talking about. That's like, I really want to go into this. So this really is me. This really is what I'm doing. And also it then also just kind of perpetuates what academics look like, and let's open it up. And I think this whole thing that you were saying about the kind of the mystique of it, that that it's that kind of smoke and mirrors thing, that kind of the you there should be an, you know, you should have an understanding of how you do these things. Well, how are you going to find that out unless you talk to people? And how are you going to find those people if you're not already in that network? So I think that sense of, as you say, really acknowledging what you are really passionate about, I think that's really powerful. And then also knowing that it's okay to ask people for information.
100%. Yeah. I think one of the key things that's beautiful about academia, and something that you learn as a strong applicant is how to harness the you parts, like this is the me, myself, versus others, what's their input, right? So for me, I know what I need to do. I need to be able to tell my story in a way that people can connect with. I need to make sure that things make sense. The other part is like, how can I get feedback? How can I make sure that I'm finding the right supervisors? One thing I always tell to, everyone who I talk to, I reach out to is your supervisor is the most important relationship. Something I learned. I'm so grateful for this. I learned this in my master's, and I kind of knew this before going to my master's, but like for a lot of people, the supervisory relationship is as serious as, if you were going to date someone or marry someone, you would put a lot of thought into this person. Your supervisor, on average, you're going to spend at least 4 years working closely with this individual. Why not put that much thought and that much insight? Don't just go and say, okay, this person's willing to take me. You should also reflect on, are you willing to take this person, right? Are you willing to deal with their quirks? Are you willing to, they have a particular teaching style. They have a particular style of giving feedback. They have a particular working pattern. They also have a track record of this with other students they've worked with. That should be something that you're considering, because lots of people, like I believe, like we know that lots of PhD students end up having mental health issues. So if you are trying to protect your mental health and your overall health and well-being, it's this relationship has a huge impact on that. So why not like put some thought into looking and vetting and finding not just someone who hits the research sort of interest, but also on a relational basis is someone that you can work with, and also has created an environment, because other students within, depending on the type of research you're doing, if you're lab-based research or a group that works closely together, other people within that environment also have an impact on your well-being, right? They can either help you find the right resources, the right papers you should be reading, the right training you should be finding out, or just overall, morale boosting, or signposting to resources. They have a huge impact in that. So I know personally for me that without, I'm so lucky. I know I'm very lucky, but I also, give a lot of credit to the training I had as well, that I've had amazing supervisors. My master's supervisor, because I have a research master's. So my master's is, was a 3-year master's. I had to put together a proposal, defend my proposal. I wrote up, collected data, analyzed it, wrote up my 150 pages of thesis and defended it. So through that time, I also had professional like courses as well in our program that taught us things to be looking about in academia. And I learned that, your supervisor has such a huge impact on your well-being that you should be thinking so much about that, like really, really in-depth wise. So for me, my master supervisor, she was incredibly supportive for me. I lost 2 family members within 3 months, and she created such a hedge of protection around me. And my topic as well was in end of life care, so it was like incredibly, incredibly difficult to be in that environment and suffer such loss and have to do research on, death and dying. So without her support, without someone who is so like inherently compassionate, like she was counterculture to what was normal in academia. I remember the first time I met her, I was just going to introduce myself and tell her about my research. And she was running late, and she was so apologetic. And then she was like, she hugged me, and I was like, oh, am I in the wrong place? What's going on? But I was not used to such, compassion really, and such connection. It was so strange for me, because in academia it's like it feels like this really like highly cold and professional, like let's keep a certain working distance. So she was counter culture to all of that, but she was not too different from a lot of the academics in that department as well. A lot of them were very like aware of things and really tried to connect with you. My current PhD supervisors are like amazing. My primary supervisor is really, really like checking in, asking me about well-being questions. Also, there's a level of validation that they both gave me that I think like I wouldn't have the confidence I have now. Like I'm learning still, I'm growing as a researcher, as a doctoral student, but I have a level of confidence like for example, my PhD supervisor currently will like really like affirm the things like you're like, I can see that you have this experience is showing really like, going to that. So coming back to that analogy I gave of like, the tennis ball and football thing, like he's my coach, like my supervisor is my coach. So he's recognizing what I'm doing well and helping me like build on that. So I think like a lot of the things that you're doing in your application stage will actually feed into your entire doctoral experience. So when I was applying for my PhD, I did not compromise on that. Like I was constantly scanning and looking for indications that my current PhD supervisor was not going to be like, a wrong decision. I took that so seriously that until the first day, I was like, I am not compromising. Yes, I'm fully funded. Yes, I have a scholarship. Yes, I don't have to worry about anything. But I don't want to be 2 years in and be thinking, oh my days, I wish I had not accepted this PhD. Like it would have been better for me to not be in a PhD than be in this. So I was constantly aware of that. And I did lots of things while applying. I asked first contact for all like two other students. I spoke to one student who, like, when I asked really like, very specific questions, and one of the students disclosed to me the life challenge that they had gone through and how the supervisor like I'm not just saying like just giving encouraging words, but like tangibly helped. I was floored. Like it was like okay, if this supervisor can do this for this student at one of the most challenging periods of their lives, then like it was not a hesitation for me that he was going to be my supervisor. I was like, okay, this shows that inherently what kind of a human being I'm working with. So yeah, for me, I think that application process is about you, like the me, the internal work, the personal statements, the research proposal, all the things that you're bringing in your application, but it's also the others as well within that, the supervisor, talking to the students, getting a sense of feedback from other people. So ultimately, this is a life-changing decision. And if it's a life-changing decision, as we know it to be, then it should be treated with the same level of gravitas as you would any other life-changing decision. Because this PhD is even more impactful than your master's and your bachelor's was, because it's going to be the jumping off point for the rest of your career. So, yeah.
Wow. I love it. I love this. First of all, I just want to say again, I'm so sorry to hear of the challenges that you faced during your masters. But I love this idea that you have of this. Do you take the supervisor to be your lawful? No, I think that's brilliant. I think commitment ceremonies could be a thing, right? And as you say, taking that really seriously, because you are stepping into a deep and involved, well, depending on, as we say, sometimes not so involved, and that can be a problem in itself. But this is a very meaningful relationship that you're stepping into. Cynthia, I'm aware of time. This is all golden, so much good stuff in there. I just wonder, as we finish, if there are any top tips that you would like to share for people who are thinking about applying for a PhD.
Yeah. Oh my days, lots of tips I'd love to give, but I think just echoing some of what I said is the you factor. So think in terms of myself, like what is my unfair advantage and how can I highlight that?
Right.
If you are trying to look at other people and see how you can stand out from other people, you lose focus of you and what makes you special. So I think like really kind of doing the internal work, sit down and just reflect on why you're making the decision and what are the things that you've gone through so far has brought you to this decision and what you hope to achieve. And in the middle of that, you'll find that you've got a unique story. You've got an unfair advantage, right? You've got something that other people don't have, like maybe the country you grew up, maybe the family you grew up, maybe the fact that you had to, overcome a specific type of challenge that other people haven't. Like your story is so unique, your background is so unique. Don't try to be like anyone else. Don't try to compare yourself to anyone else. Just try to stand out you and let all the other work that you've done around that, like getting feedback from other people, they will help you understand how you stand out from the crowd. Your job is to highlight your unfair advantage.
Yes, you are. This is a thing. You've been called to this for a reason, and you bring special skills and experience to it. Love it. I love it. I love it. Cynthia, thank you so much. As I say, we'll have all your details on the show notes. I wish you all the very best. May you recruit many people. And I hope things go really well for you going forwards. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ma. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening.